A mini Schefter bomb. Adam Schefter's latest on the San Francisco 49ers quarterback situation, including Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Sam Darnold pecking order. Some things we knew mostly, maybe something we didn't quite know, though. And Lance, among others, with George Kittle at Tide and University. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All the everydayers out there, if you want to be one, just subscribe up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. All right. So Adam Schefter, Croc, on with, what was he on? He was on with Pat McAfee, right? And, talking about, look, 49ers quarterbacks sell. We know that more than anybody here on Locked On 49ers, covering the 49ers every day. There always seems to be a story that pops up. A lot of people are making a big deal about what Adam Schefter said. I don't think what he said is really anything new. And if you didn't catch his segment with Pat McAfee, he basically said the 49ers view Brock Purdy as the guy. When healthy, Brock Purdy is the top quarterback. And that's nothing new. He talked about, he went back. I still don't know exactly what the timeline is here. And we need to figure out, we need somebody in the building and hear it from, Adam Peters, hear it from John Lynch, hear it from Kyle Shanahan about the 2021 draft and Trey Lance. And basically he said Niners initially traded up for Mac Jones and then kind of ended up loving Trey Lance and liked Trey Lance more and ended up drafting Trey Lance. And not necessarily that it was like adversarial. We've heard it said that it was Kyle Shanahan wanted Mac Jones, talked into Trey Lance. I don't know if it's that far, but there's something there with those two quarterbacks. We know they liked both of those quarterbacks. And
I can get my thoughts on that.
Okay. Do you have some thoughts on that? Because look, I don't think it's anything new. I don't think we know exactly. And because it's funny, because part of it is Adam Schefter trying to cover his own tracks because he was like, oh, it's Mac Jones.
Yeah.
Right. So I think is that part of it? Do you think that's part of it where everyone wants to keep telling us it was Mac Jones because that's what they thought and maybe it wasn't that all along? So I'm not sold on that whole story, but except for what Kyle has told us, which is they like both guys. They liked Trey Lance more.
I think coaches are late to the party when it comes to player evaluation, guys coming out of college. And with Mac Jones, he's on TV every week. So even if you're Kyle Shanahan, you're preparing for a game, but right there on CBS, you got, Alabama playing against Auburn, Alabama playing against LSU, Auburn, Alabama, and they're playing in big games every single week. They're just on TV, and you just see Mac Jones, and you watch some of the things, and you're like, man, I like this kid. I can see how he fits in our offense. And then, you start to dive into some of the prospects once the offseason begins, and you're looking at these quarterbacks, and it's like, man, maybe you cut on Mac Jones first because you know exactly we might have to trade up for this guy. And then they're like, hey, there are some other quarterbacks. And look, there's this guy from North Dakota State that's very intriguing. He only got to play a year because, look, you didn't see him on TV. He missed that whole year. So he wasn't, like I said, you watch Mac Jones on TV. You could not watch Trey Lance on TV. So he probably, I'm assuming, found out about Trey Lance late in the process, started to do a deep dive, saw some things he really liked, saw some things where he's like, you know what? I like how he does this, like how he does that. Man, maybe there's some rawness or whatever to his game, and it's a huge step up from FCS as a redshirt freshman to the NFL. But, man, we can bring him along. We got the roster, etc. And, that is more of the tools you're looking for, someone who ran like he did in college, someone who has a big arm like he does. And then you get to meet him and you're around him and you run his pro day and you're like, wow, this kid's sharp. It's like,
pro style offense, right?
Pro style, yeah. Yeah. All right, let's take this guy, And I think it was more so of that, like really just coming to the party late when it came to Trey Lance, as opposed to having to be talked into Trey Lance. That's that. Now again, that's just me guessing. Just like damn, Adam Schefter isn't during this segment.
No, yeah, and I can totally buy all of that. And it's the other thing about it too, because the Trey Lance, and we're going to talk more about Trey Lance in a second, because that's one of the other nuggets that that Schefter dropped, which is kind of a little bit new. And we already know that Trey Lance didn't get traded, so there wasn't a good enough offer for the 49ers to trade Trey Lance. But the way Schefter put it was that basically there was no interest in Trey Lance. And so I do want to talk about that and how there could be, how it could be worth so little to either the Niners or any other teams in the league with where he was drafted, but not knowing yet, you know, he's still just that same prospect, and he's still younger than Will Levis. You know what I mean? Like, so, but just back to the Mac Jones thing really quick. Like one of the things that will be said eventually, if Trey Lance doesn't turn out, it's like, oh, well, the 49ers, Kyle was talked out of it. You know, he didn't want Mac Jones, or he didn't want Trey Lance anyway. He wanted Mac Jones. And I always come back to, that was a terrible idea too. Trading up to 3 for Mac Jones. Like, who does that? Like that should have never been on the radar for the 49ers. So the whole thing has just been bizarre. No matter if it was Mac Jones, no matter if it was Trey Lance, when they traded up, how much they gave up to trade up, the whole development process after they drafted who they drafted, the whole thing has just been none of that part of it has made sense. And I still cannot believe the 49ers are in the place they are doing that, where they're still a Super Bowl contender. And they drafted a guy in the 7th round who's now, they're like, cool, we got a guy. We spent 3 firsts on this guy, but we just drafted this guy last in the draft. And he's our guy, actually. So we're cool. And we're still Super Bowl contenders. None of it makes sense, Croc.
It doesn't. But the fact that people think that Kyle Shanahan got talked into anything, I doubt it. Look, there's a video from years ago when he was with the Cleveland Browns where the head coach, I want to say Pettin.
Yeah, Mike Pettin. I love it.
I think you should run it here. And Kyle just looks at him like, bro, don't tell me what. And he's like, you know what? You got it. Call the play that you want.
35, maybe probably younger. He just looked.
He was young. His baby.
Yeah.
But he just looked at him like, dude, don't tell me what to do. And then he's like, you're right. You know, like he didn't even have to say anything. But Pettin was like, you're right. Call what you want to call. You know, run the play you want to. And then the way they made it seem was like he dialed up a touchdown or whatever it was. But if he wasn't able to be talked into something then, when he's not even running the show, you're the head guy. You can't tell me what to do. Then he gets to the 49ers, and he wasn't able to get talked into Patrick Mahomes when John Lynch called him. John Lynch was there at Mahomes Pro Day as a smokescreen. It's like, hey, you might want to check out this Mahomes guy. He's kind of good. I don't know. And then I want to say it was his buddy, Chris Sims, was like, you might want to check out Mahomes and Watson. I don't know. And he's like, nah, I want Cousins, right? And he wasn't able to get talked into that. And I guess he kind of was persuaded with the Jimmy Garoppolo thing, but he told everybody how he felt about that. It was not a move I wanted to make. So the one time he was talked into something, he made it very clear, it's not what I want. I couldn't even sleep at night over that decision. Like, that's not what I wanted. And once it happened, he's like, I know I can't get Cousins, and I want Cousins, right? So in this situation where he's has an opportunity to draft his guy, you think he's going to draft anyone but who he really wants? Absolutely not. So that whole narrative of, oh, see, that was Kyle drafted who he wanted to draft. There was no way he was going to draft somebody that he did not want to draft. I never saw that as a possibility. Right. Now, again, that's not to say that he didn't like Mac Jones or would not have drafted Mac Jones. But the fact that he drafted Trey Lance, like, that was who he wanted to draft. And I do not think he had to be talked into it, because he doesn't come off as the person that gets talked into things. He talked about it with the analytics guy upstairs when they said, hey, do you have an analytics guy? He's like, yeah. Do you listen to him? No, I don't. Like, he doesn't listen to anybody.
Yeah, the analytics guy's like, hey, the numbers say you should go for it here. And he's like, okay, thanks. We're kicking.
Right.
That's Kyle Shanahan. It's his show. Yeah. Kyle Shanahan is absolutely in charge of all of it. Maybe even the defense too. So next,
he's in charge of the defense. He tells the defensive coordinator what he wants him to run, and he's gonna listen to somebody about his quarterback. There's no way.
Yeah, no way. So Trey Lance is Brock. I mean, is Sam Darnold ahead of Trey Lance as well on the depth chart? And why does Trey Lance have such little value? Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Birddogs. Man, you want to look good, right? You want to feel good as well. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddogs shorts do the exact same thing as whatever. Think of the best shorts you've ever had, that the way they felt. And then think of the best shorts you ever had, the way they looked. Birddogs puts those two things together. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Birddogs fixed those issues by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. For example, if you're on YouTube right now, you can see Croc's fresh face. I don't think I've ever seen Croc's chin before, but he's clean shaven. He's got his button-up shirt on. He could go get himself a job if he wanted right now. Those Birddogs shorts would look real good with him, with his outfit right now. But you could lounge in Birddogs as well. They're professional. You could go out and if a pickup game broke out, you could go play in those because they move with you, stretch every direction you need them to stretch. And Birddogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long, especially in those summer months. So, and by the way, you can get yourself a tumbler as well, which I do not have in front of me, but it's a really nice Yeti style tumbler. Just go to birddogs.com/lockedonnfl for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnfl for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. Okay. A little bit more on the Schefter comments on the Pat McAfee show as it pertains to Sam Darnold and Trey Lance. We already knew that Brock Purdy's the guy. They've told us when he's healthy, he's going to be the starting quarterback.
The leader in the clubhouse.
The leader in the clubhouse.
And he earned that based off of his play last season. He's been the guy that start. Now, here's the thing, and I know we're going to get into Schefter, but
yeah,
is it he's earned the right to get the first crack at it, or is it no? It's just point blank his show.
You know what? To be honest, in some ways, I think Purdy's injury has helped him because he doesn't have to compete because he can't compete. If he did have first crack this offseason, it was getting the reps with the ones, and then Trey Lance with the twos, and then Darnold with the twos and with the threes, and then at camp, Kyle Shanahan's looking around and is like, well, he hasn't separated himself, and maybe Trey Lance plays better than preseason. Purdy doesn't play that great. Maybe there would have been an opportunity, but now in Kyle Shanahan's mind, all he's seeing is December Brock Purdy. So in a lot of ways, Purdy doesn't have a chance to lose the job by not practicing right now. And so he's kind of the guy, and he's going to be treated as if he's been a 7-year veteran instead of a 7-game veteran in the NFL. And he's been the leader in the clubhouse, and he's been in the clubhouse for a long time, and he's not going to come out of the clubhouse until it's time to play football. So who's going to pass him up in that time? It doesn't seem like anybody. But it's interesting that Schefter says that he's hearing that it's maybe Sam Darnold that's leading the fight for number 2. And it's really early. I don't know how they would know that. And man, if the 49ers are that down on Trey Lance that he's not even the number 2 entering camp when he was the number 1 last year entering camp, with how little he's played, he must be showing something that we don't know about that they really don't like that we haven't seen on film.
Well, the interesting thing is, anytime we've had a chance to see him, there has never been anything where I'm like, this is so bad. This is not a guy you can have on the field. Now, I'm not saying he was never like inconsistent in games, or, especially early on, like the Seahawks game where it's like, hey, you one hop that, basically a long handoff, or man, you missed on that slant. There's some throws that are a little erratic, but then he comes back and he's firing and he does these things, and they're like, okay, I see why they drafted him, right? Even in that Seahawks game when he came in, where, he starts throwing some passes, he threw 2 touchdowns, and, he comes in, and I remember 4th and 10, he shakes guys, runs up the middle, breaks another guy, gets the first down. You just start to see like his ability. And I feel like every game we've watched him playing, you see what it potentially could be, but I never saw anything to where it's like, this guy is so bad you can't play him, right? Even like Texans game, not a guy that I ever thought watching that game. And I'm not saying it was amazing, but I didn't think he can't play, right? And then you watch him last year, and even in the monsoon game where it did get ugly late early on, outside that big tight end miss, it was a huge miss, but he threw the ball well, right? It didn't look like, he ran the ball. He was 3rd and 13. He picks up a first down with his legs. Like, he did a lot of things that was like, okay, cool. So for them to be as down, if it's something that we haven't seen, it would have to be something not only that we haven't seen, but something that the beat writers, and I know they weren't at every OTA practice. I know they were at the minicamp practices. It has never been reported or seen at any point where it's just like, this guy is just way in over his head and can't play. So how much difference are we seeing from the games, which again, inconsistent? I definitely would give him that. But from that to, well, he can't beat out Sam Darnold, because at no time have we seen that poor of a quarterback in Trey Lance. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you've seen it or hear it a different way. But to me, we've seen it. Like, it's a small sample size, but we've seen enough to know, like, well, he has a lot of talent and ability.
Right. And the other thing was like the off-field stuff. He was supposed to be this great kid, work ethic. They believed him, loved his family, loved everything about him, right? And so the other thing is, okay, if it's not really showing much in practice, and we haven't seen it on the game film and in preseason, that is disqualifying for him to not, at least be the number 2 guy behind Brock Purdy and still have a lot of hope for what he could be as the number 1 guy. Is there like some off-field stuff? It's like with Jamarcus Russell, he was drinking scissor off the field and he's overweight. Trey Lance is in good shape. It's like, so what is there something there that we just can't possibly see?
He was the guy that watched the most film, remember? And then Kyle was like, well, some guys, they just leave it running or whatever. So, he doesn't put a whole lot of stock into that. But that was the thing where it came out. He was logging the most minutes watching film. So I don't think it's that. I don't know what it is. And maybe he just can't play, but every time we've seen him, and everybody kind of perceives it different, it looks like someone who, I think he just needs to play more. That's what I've always took from it. Yeah, I think he just needs to play more.
It's always been, and that's what they won't give him. That's why it's so dumbfounding. The entire development process for Trey Lance, it's not even a process. It's zero development. It's like, well, sorry, you weren't able to come immediately and play in the NFL at 20 years old from the FCS level. So sorry. That's the way it feels in some ways, which is just insane for how much they believed in him and what they gave up to go get Trey Lance and handpick him to be the guy, and just kind of quitting on the development is what it feels like in some ways. And that's not to put down Brock Purdy at all. If Brock Purdy earns the job and he earned it and he's the guy, then he's the guy. But it's the Sam Darnold stuff that's the weirdest for me, that they wouldn't even give him an opportunity, right, that they would just plug in Sam Darnold and be like, we like Sam Darnold, the veteran who's played 55 games better than the guy who's played 4 games.
So remember back to Josh Allen's rookie year. And again, this is not me comparing Trey Lance to Josh Allen, just guys that start off and there's a lot of weird moments, right? Let's say Josh Allen got hurt and had to miss a bunch of games. But based off of how he played, and then for the next 6 games, Brock Purdy plays the same way that he just played for the 49ers. Do we ever see Josh Allen again? Do we ever find out what Josh Allen could have been?
Yeah, and maybe not.
And that's kind of for the people that are like, man, I just want to see him play, right? Like, there's one of my guys, Lawrence Jackson on Twitter, he voted or made a ranking of the most toxic fan bases, top 5 most toxic fan bases.
I saw that, yeah.
He got 49ers number 1. Now, that's an outside guy, and he's just like, that fan base, toxic, But part of it was, he was like talking about the split and divide between Brock Purdy and Trey Lance and the fans and how they've taken one side or another. And I do feel like there's one side that just like, oh man, like Trey, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I just want to see him play. Like, that's it. Like, I would love to just see him play 8 straight games and see what that looks like, so I could just know if the guy sucks and can't play, or if he actually, man, look at him from that first start, look at him at the 4th start, then look at him at the 8th start, and you just see this incremental kind of development that's going, and he's getting it, and all of a sudden you have this talented guy that's getting it. And we don't have that. So I'm just like, man, I just would like to see the kid play. And if he sucks, then great. But unfortunately, because of the circumstances and Brock Purdy played so well, we don't know if we'll see it. And he might not even be the second string quarterback, which is even wilder to me. And by all the reports that we've heard from minicamp, everything I'm hearing from guys, there was never Sam Darnold is better than Trey Lance at these practices. That's not what I never heard that, not one time. And I've listened to a lot of different things. Now, I did hear it was either little to no separation, and that's understandable. But at least in the practices people were able to watch, there was never the thought of, oh, Sam Darnold, he's just going to be the number 2. So Schefter, and he said, hey, well, these are just my thoughts. And I don't know if he's doing the thing that Ian Rappaport did. And then the 49ers must have reached out to him and was like, why do you keep saying that? Like, we actually like Trey Lance. Like, why do you keep saying that Darnold is going to be the guy? So he kind of came back and then, on the same show. And I'm wondering if, by training camp, maybe Adam Schefter does the same thing. I don't know.
There shouldn't be that much separation in OTAs. I will say that. And so training camp is going to be huge for all of this, and everybody will actually get to see him, and we'll actually have a reason to have an idea of what's happening with these guys and see him in preseason games. Next, tight end U. Trey Lance was there. I believe Sam Darnold was there. Who was there? Who wasn't there? And what other thing I saw at tight end U that I think is interesting that ties into this whole Trey Lance thing as well. Next. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. If you want to be one, just make sure you're subscribed up every day and find us on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Make sure you check out the rest of what the network has to offer as well, including the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Myself and former NFL scout Matt Williamson breaking down the entire league daily right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So George Kittle, tight end U, and George Kittle is one of the people earlier this offseason that said Trey Lance is light years ahead of where he was before. And this is the best version of Trey Lance that he's seen. And Trey Lance was at tight end U, and I mean, 1 million people are at tight end U. This is a massive thing that happens every offseason now. It seems like it's growing and growing. There's like Gronk was there, Dallas Clark was there, like not even current, not even just current tight ends, right? Yeah. But Trey Lance was there. I believe Sam Darnold was there, but I just saw a lot more of Trey Lance being there. And it's just one of the reminders, too, about it. And like you said earlier, Croc, about Trey Lance and what we've seen, like from his rookie year, watching that Houston Texans game. Like, okay, this is rookie Trey Lance. I like this. We're seeing something from a guy who could probably play in the NFL. Excited to see what it looks like in year 2 when it's his job. And we didn't really get to see much of that. Going back to week 1 last year in the pre-monsoon part of the game, it was rainy, had some misses, but he was playing better quarterback than Justin Fields was in those first 3 quarters, right? Going
outside of 2 plays, right?
And
Fields pulled a couple plays out of his ass, but yeah,
Fields made 2 plays, and that's good on him, right? But the thing is, we didn't really see the Fields breakout until midway through last year, which means Lance needs to play. Not only is he missing college snaps over, compared to Justin Fields, he still needs a full season to play to get to where Fields was when he broke out last year, right? So like reps again. So it's like when you look at the Trey Lance development, we already knew he needed reps. He hasn't gotten them, so that's not a shock. We knew he's a little inaccurate coming out. That was one of the red flags I didn't like about him. That's why I like Fields more, because Fields just made elite throws down the field. His downfield accuracy was crazy. In Fields, time to throw might have been a problem. Still has been a problem in the NFL. Lance
probably would have been a problem with Kyle Shanahan, because
of course,
Kyle is all timing and rhythm, and he back foot ball, he wants it out.
Yeah, and that's not Fields' game. Fields much more like a Russell Wilson style quarterback, and that was my comp for Fields coming out. But I still liked him as a better prospect than both Mac Jones and Trey Lance. And the reason I liked him over Lance, he was just a little bit more athletic, and his arm was better. I thought he was just more accurate down the field. So there's nothing that Trey Lance has shown that should be at all surprising to anybody. And that's the other part with Trey Lance. But the reminder is, for me, and I'm just watching these clips at tight end U, and Trey Lance is like dropping back, boom, like the ball comes out, like he's so talented, right? And like he's like, oh yeah, the ball jumps out of his hand. He's got these abilities that I want to see developed on the field. And it's just a reminder seeing him again, because we haven't seen him in a long time. Seeing him throw the football, then he's just throwing these little out routes to tight ends, right? To George Kittle. But when you see him let it go, like he's got an arm. Like I want to see what that looks like in Kyle Shanahan's offense. I just want to see the development complete. I don't think we're going to get a chance to see it.
I don't either. And that's tough. You know what it is? I think it feels like someone that was done wrong by someone, and then they're searching for that closure, right? Like, I just want them to apologize. And it's like, you're probably not going to get that apology that you're looking for. So just kind of get over it. And I think that's what we're going through right now, where it's just like, we're looking for that closure. Like, let me just see that he just really can't play. And it's like, yo, Peacock, Croc, you're never going to get the closure that you want from this situation.
And then the other part of the closure would be he gets traded somewhere else. And it's like, okay, the 49ers, it's Purdy 1, Darnold 2, Brandon Allen 3, period. Everyone knows, like, stop talking about it. It's done. Everybody knows from the top of the organization to the bottom of the organization. Every single fan in the seats knows exactly what the pecking order is, knows who the quarterback is. Done. It's over, right? For just peace of mind for everybody. But then also for Trey Lance in his career, getting to go play somewhere. But then there's the other part of the Schefter report is that, like, no offers. Like, not only did because like obviously not enough of an offer for the 49ers to trade him, but did they get nothing? Did nobody call John Lynch and say, oh, I'll give you a 4th rounder or whatever for Trey Lance? I find it hard to believe, but the way Schefter worded it made it seem like there was just zero interest around the league. So with everything we've laid out, with really nothing about Trey Lance right now being surprising based on what we knew of him as a prospect, and he was a top 3 prospect in the draft. He's still younger than a lot of the quarterbacks that were drafted this year. He's going to be younger than half the quarterback prospects that are drafted next year. All this talent, how can Trey Lance be worth so little to both the 49ers and the rest of the league?
So there's a couple of different ways to look at that. One, let's just say from a value standpoint in general. If I'm a team, and I've said this before on here, why would I give up a bunch for a guy that really is your most expensive quarterback on your roster? You don't want to start him. You want to start Brock Purdy. So why am I going to give you top dollar for him? Because you gave up a lot to get him? Like, I'm not doing that. I'll give you what I feel like he's worth at this point, which is a quarterback who hasn't played many games in 2 years, and really going back further than that because of COVID and then, college. Very little inexperience. I still would not know what I'm getting, right? Yeah, I know I'm getting a talent. I don't know what that talent is going to do on the field, and I haven't seen it. So you can look at Nick Foles, and I want to say the Bears traded a 1st to get him from the Eagles after that Super Bowl run. They gave up something pretty good.
Yeah.
And you can look it up, right? But at least we saw one, there's Nick Foles years ago that was like 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And obviously, like, that wasn't sustainable, right? That flamed out. But ultimately got another crack at it, and boom, Carson Wentz goes down. He plays out of his mind. Okay, you want to trade, but we know what we're getting. With Trey Lance, you just don't know. You just know that he's talented, but you don't know what he's going to be. So there's that way of looking at it. Like, why would I give up anything higher than a 4th? Where the 49ers are looking at it like, dude, we used 3 first-round picks on him. We used 3. We're not giving them up for a 4th, right? So there's that part of it. The other part of it is,
real quick on that point, I totally get not a team not wanting to pay top dollar, but not wanting to pay $1.
So this is the other part.
Okay.
Sometimes, because it said the 49ers were not shopping them, they weren't actively looking to where, hey, what John said, this 1-800 trade Trey Lance or whatever he said, right? Like, they're not putting it out there that they want to trade this guy or that they're even interested in trading him. And it kind of reminds me of, I have a quarterback that I work with, and he's transferring schools. And his mom was like, yeah, like, we're going to sell our home. And they've been living in this home for I don't know how long, right? Years. Never, beautiful home. Never got any offers for it. They've been living in it for a long time. No offers. The moment they said we're moving, they've gotten $700,000 cash offers We're talking about in 2 days. They just told everybody yesterday they were moving to take their kid to another school. And they're moving out of town about an hour away. And instantly got offers. So they didn't get offers before that. Now, football is a little different. I understand that. But maybe it was just one of those things where it's like, hey, we're not really going to pursue it. If they say that he's available for trade, then, okay, we'll look into it and let's see what it costs. But if they're not putting him up for trade and you got Brock Purdy who's out with an elbow and they maybe want to be safer and they had a bunch of injuries at the quarterback position, why would, we're not interested in just going and offering something for him. So I think that's what it was. Could be right now, my gym. Nobody's offering me anything for my gym. But if I said, hey, my gym is for sale, what would I get for it? Maybe lower than what I initially paid. I built my gym during COVID. Everything was more expensive. Right? Everything was more expensive during COVID. So now if I try to sell it for what I paid for my gym, people will be like, you're on crack. Not giving you that, right? So I think that's just a business element of it, more so than just nobody likes them. I think people would be intrigued and potentially give up something, but I don't think it's anything they're going to go out of their way for because they know just as little as we do, or the 49ers.
Yep, and you mentioned the money part of it, which I think is an important aspect of it too, because as a number 3 pick, he's got a pretty hefty contract that comes with it. And you see a team like the Tennessee Titans with Rand Carthon. That was one of the teams I thought, man, Tannehill, this is a perfect opportunity for Trey Lance over there. But they, Will Levis fell to the second round. So Will Levis is under contract for 4 years. He's a physically talented guy. You draft him in the second round, you've got him cheaper for longer than you would get Trey Lance. So I understand that, but the one that I don't get is like the Lions, who drafted dude from Tennessee in the 3rd round. Trey Lance can go back to college, play a full college career, come back, still be the same age as I'm blanking on his name right now. Quarterback from Tennessee that the Lions drafted in the 3rd round. Like, I would much rather have Trey Lance than that guy. But again, they have an expensive quarterback already, so it's probably just a dollars thing too. So there wasn't really a clean fit for Trey Lance on another roster, unless it was one of those, unless it was like the Texans or the Titans, and they went other quarterbacks.
Do they think that Trey Lance is going to come in today and play better than Jared Goff? I would say no.
And probably the Titans felt the same way about, the Titans. It would have probably had to be like, okay, we're going to get rid of Tannehill and Lance is coming in to be the guy. Right.
And low-key, they have a Trey Lance, right? Like
a couple of unknowns. Yeah.
Right. But the quarterback, Malik Willis.
Yeah.
Like that's there where it's like, okay, we want, can we develop him? Can we, his athleticism, big arm, like, let's see. We're just going to let him battle with Will Levis. Right. So it's like, well, I would love to have Trey Lance and have him compete, but we already have our version.
Right. If they didn't already have that much of an unknown, although we saw Willis play and it was bad. Saw Lance play and it was like, okay, we work with this. So that was the difference between those two. But I get what you're saying. One last thing, Croc, did you happen to see if 49ers rookie tight ends Cameron Latu and Braden Willis were at tight end U? Because I haven't seen that anywhere.
I did not see that, but let's see if I can.
We can, because that's important. I want to get some reports on what those guys look like at tight end U, and I hope they were there. And by the way, if we can't find it, let us know on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker. Drop a comment on YouTube in the comments there, and we'll probably hit some of your questions in future episodes here of Locked On 49ers as we roll through the offseason. Croc, you find anything yet?
Nothing yet.
Okay, I didn't see anything either. So let us know. Were the 49ers rookie tight ends at tight end U? They better have been. They need some of that schooling so they can be ready to go for the 49ers behind George Kittle. All right. Thanks everybody for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. Croc and I back next time right here, Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.